Welcome back to Wyoming Base. This is gonna be a video on how to order a half or whole beef. First, why are we making this video? Many people would like to order directly from their local rancher, but to put it simply, they don't know how, and the entire process is intimidating. It's intimidating because it's a lot of money all at once. You have to decide on all of the cuts, and you need a lot of freezer space, and people are unsure of how much they would need. This ends up causing people to be hesitant and never end up ordering from their local rancher. With that said, this video is targeted for people who do not know how to order a half or whole beef. It's likely that the majority of our subscribers already know how to do this process. For these people, I would probably just recommend you skip the video since this information is not going to be relevant for you. However, if you are a fan of the channel, please take the opportunity to help build our community and comment below any helpful information for people who are new to this process. Perhaps share your favorite freezer brand, your favorite unconventional cuts, anything that could help people that are new to the process. We're gonna break the video down into a couple sections. I'm gonna tell you my opinion, and then Tristan will tell you his. Between the two of us, you should gain a fair understanding of the entire process. Disclaimer though, we are not ranchers, therefore we are not experts. Feel free to comment your input below in the comment section. How to order a half/whole beef. Tristan and I agree on about 5 steps. On each step, we will give our individual input. First, decide how much beef you want. Basically, I would recommend buying half a cow. You can buy other amounts, but you get the cost savings by buying more all at once. Also, when you buy less than half of a cow, you have to understand what you would be getting in the box, because you might end up with the front or back half. It could end up being a lot of cuts that you don't want. In the end, I would just recommend buying half a cow the first time. This lets you save money by purchasing in bulk. It's gonna give you all the cuts. You'll end up with a lot of meat, but it does not cost as much as purchasing a whole cow, and it lets you test if you really love the beef that the rancher produces. And if not, you won't be stuck with a whole cow that you have to work through.
First, you kind of got to decide how much you want, how much you need. If you have a large family of 4, if you have X amount of freezer space, if you have X amount of dollars to spend, that's going to kind of dictate your decision on how much meat you can buy. It's really common to go half beef or even quarter. A benefit here is you can also pull together friends and get a better rate. So like GT and I we bought a whole cow together, but we got a half each, and that was good because I actually didn't even have enough room for a whole cow, and really a whole cow for someone living by themselves or with just 2 people is quite a bit. First thing you got to do is decide how much you want. I would say that depends on your budget, that depends on your size of the people who are going to consuming this, and your freezer space or your space in general, because a whole animal, a whole beef takes up a lot.
Step 2, decide on a freezer. After deciding on an amount of beef you're going to purchase, decide on what chest freezer you want. I have a large one. It is 14.8 cubic feet. Tristan, on the other hand, has 2 7 cubic feet freezers. To me, one large one is more effective and more efficient. You might be able to fit your half cow in a 7 cubic foot freezer. However, the problem I have with that is that all the meat is going to be like stacked up, and you won't really be able to see what cuts are available. With a larger freezer, you can stack similar cuts near each other and sort through what you want easily. Secondly, I always have other meats or goods inside of the freezer. And because I have a larger freezer, I usually can fit everything. I would say to buy the largest freezer you can. It's also worth noting that the amount of meat you get is going to vary. That range is going to be dependent upon the age of the animal, the breed, the feed, what season you got the animal in, etc. The actual meat you can end up with is going to vary. To manage that, you will have to ask the rancher for an estimate. As far as freezer brands, I do not have a brand that I definitely can recommend. I did a lot of research and I couldn't find a consensus. I currently have a Frigidaire and it's worked good so far, but there's no brand out there that is the clear-cut winner like the Speed Queen is for washers and dryers. If people have a chest freezer brand that they really recommend, post it below.
You kind of have to understand what are your possibilities in terms of storage, right? So that comes down to the freezer space, and those steps could be reversed. You might already have a freezer, which is great, and but a lot of people don't really have a big chest best freezer that is beneficial for storing, a quarter, half, whole animal. You got to decide on what size freezer you want, how much room you have. For me, the sweet spot has been 7 cubic foot freezers, because that's the largest amount of volume you can get at a low price point. So I have 2 7 cubic foot freezers in my garage, plenty of room. They're easy to, install. You just plug them in. Best Buy sells them, Walmart sells them, Home Depot, Lowe's sells them. They're around $200 to $250. You can get them on sale occasionally for $175 to $190. I like it because they're cheap and you have more flexibility. You could put 1 7 cubic foot freezer in one corner, one in another. So that works for me. However, if you want to just go ham and get a 20 cubic foot freezer and you have that sort of space, that might be nice to just have one big freezer. Or you might have to settle for a smaller freezer, 4 to 5 cubic feet, and only can get a quarter cow, for example. So if you do buy one online, there is probably a 40 to 50% chance that it will show up damaged. This is what I have found. If you go on Amazon, Walmart.com, and read any of the reviews, like 40 to 50% of the time, it will show up damaged. So you might want to consider getting insurance or make sure the return policy is strong. Or just go buy it in person, or even better, check your local Facebook Marketplace listings. There's always people getting rid of freezers. They might be older, but as long as they work, that's really all that matters. So you could save a bunch of money in that regard.
Step number 3, find a local rancher. This is the hard part. Usually ranchers are busy taking care of their livestock, and most, honestly, are not that good at self-promotion or advertising. They're just too busy. You can look online, though you'll find that most don't have websites. I will say that is slowly changing. The best way I found is word of mouth. Ask around at your work, ask your friends, ask some local businesses. Usually you'll find someone who buys bulk and they can tell you who they buy from, if they recommend them, and of course their contact. Ask a lot of people, collect as many recommendations as you can. If you are friends with some health nuts or homesteading folks, then this is easy and you are already gonna find some great options. However, if you live in a city with a bunch of NPC normies, you're gonna have to work harder. Eventually, you will find some recommendations though. Next, call them and talk to them. They should be happy to spend time explaining everything to you. Some general questions I ask is, of course, where is the farm? What the cows are eating and being fed? If they supplement the feed at all? Do they use any antibiotics or other drugs? What processor they use? And how much a half or whole cow costs. They should be happy to answer these questions for you and overall be very proud of their process. Of course, I would recommend picking a rancher who is ethical and has high standards. You'll be able to tell that, and that will be evident when you talk to them. Most of the time I chat with them for a bit, and many are actually happy to have me come visit their ranch sometime. For me, that's a bright green light because it shows that they're proud of what they do, that they're transparent, and that they're looking to build a relationship with you. Basically, if the rancher is unable or unwilling to answer your questions and has poor customer service, then I would just keep looking. Really, if it's a good rancher, they're gonna pick up that you're new to the process and they're gonna be happy to walk you through what they do and how to order. Another side note is that you could ask the rancher if they sell individual cuts so that you can try the beef and ensure that you like it before you make a large purchase. Eventually pick a rancher, tell them what you want, half or a whole cow, ask an estimated price total, and then an ETA. Usually you pay some sort of deposit and then you pay the rest upon pickup or delivery.
Finding a local rancher, again, any of these steps could be in whatever order, but you got to know where you're getting your beef from, right? So really important to get connected with your local food producers across the board, right? What's the best way to do this? Go to a farmer's market. Go to your local farmer's market, Saturdays, Sundays, whenever they are, and start talking to folks. See who's selling what, see where they're from. If they're selling beef, ask them what their operation's like, what their grazing strategy's like, how long they've been doing it, how do they finish their cows, and if they're open to you coming out and checking out the ranch, because that's the best sign is when someone's excited for you to come check out their operation, because that shows that they have, a strong pride, a strong trust in the quality of their operation. And then you can go verify that and ask them more questions and be more connected to the food you're buying. So farmer's market is a great way. Just Googling grass-fed meat near me or beef in rural communities, Facebook is always a great option as well, just asking around. And there are some sites as well that we can link below in terms of having like a beef grass-fed beef repository or search engine that I have used in the past also. So we can link that below. But really, it's not that hard to find a good quality grass-fed beef producer in any area in the United States.
Step number 4, decide on cuts. This is one of the most intimidating pieces for people. Slowly, as you go through this ordering process over and over, you will learn the supermajority of all the cuts. Initially, I would recommend following 2 steps. First, watch episodes of The Bearded Butcher on YouTube. They might be on Rumble too. They have episodes where they take down an entire cow. This will let you get a visual and an understanding for different cuts. Second, look up recipes with cuts you're not familiar with so that you can get an idea of what you can do with regards to recipes. Next, search for a cut sheet, or you can look at the one that I used most recently that I got from my rancher. It is important to note and understand that some cuts are made up of other cuts, meaning that by choosing one cut, you can't have another one since the one you requested is made up of that cut. So, example being, if you choose prime rib, then you won't get as many ribeye steaks, obviously. Some cuts are one or the other. Some they can kind of split up. So you need to think about all your favorite cuts, write them down. Any cut that you don't want will go into ground beef. It's important to note that what you prefer is going to change over the years. The first few times you order, it's going to be a learning process. You will find new cuts that you haven't had before. Some you will like, some you won't. Eventually, you will get familiar with the supermajority of the cuts and you can decide what you want and then what you don't want. It comes down to personal preference. Maybe the first time you order, don't overdo it with ground beef. This is so that you can learn the cuts that you want and you don't want. Now for what we do, I like a lot of ground beef, so I select less roasts and I have those roasts turned into ground beef. This last order, I kept a few more back quarter roasts for making deli roast beef. I'm purchasing a slicer. I love roast beef, but I don't want all of the carcinogens that are in store-bought roast beef. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make my own. Other cuts that I kept are the flat iron, Denver chuck eye steak, rib eye steak, tenderloin steaks, picanha, skirt steak, and tri-tip steak.
Once you get an order placed and you have the beef secured, quote unquote, you're gonna have to decide on what cuts you want. And this is kind of sometimes an overwhelming process for someone who's never gotten beef in bulk before. And sometimes even for people who have in the past, you know, it can be overwhelming because what happens typically is the processor will call you or you will call the processor, and over the phone, you're gonna have to decide on, you know, do you want X in ground or do you want it as a roast? Do you want 1-inch thick steaks? Do you want 3/4 inch steaks? Do you want the Oregons? Do you want New Yorks? Do you want T-bones, porterhouse? There's some trade-offs to be made. So everything you see at the supermarket you can't get one of everything. There's trade-offs in terms of cuts, in terms of steaks. And this is important because obviously that's what you're gonna be eating for the next year. So a good processor will have a cut sheet that you can reference to before you have to make these decisions. And yeah, just think about what you like to eat the most, what's reasonable for your family. So you could get like 1 pound packages of ground meat, or you could get 1.5. You could get 2 steaks per package. You could get really thick steaks, really thin steaks. So this is something to consider beforehand when you call the processor. So think about that and research, and yeah, it's not a big deal. Worst case, you get something that you really thought you would want. Next year, or next time you buy meat in bulk, you'll make that decision.
So fifth, decide on the miscellaneous pieces. There are a couple animal parts that you want to make sure that you get. First is the marrow bones. I get mine split in half. Those are one of the best pieces and highest end cuts off an animal. Second is beef suet, which you can cook down into tallow. Animal fat is one of the best cooking oils. It's healthy, it has a high smoke point, and the flavor is unmatched. You can also use the tallow on your skin as a cream. Third is the tongue. The tongue is actually pretty large and it makes for good tacos. Fourth is other organs such as the heart or the liver. Personally, I don't like the liver or heart that much. Some people eat them, some people have some unique recipes with them. Others put them in stew for flavor, and some people feed them to their dogs. You don't want to overlook these cuts because we want to use as much of the animal as possible and because you paid for them. So if you don't take them, it's unlikely that the butcher is going to waste these, and they're either going to return them to the rancher or they themselves will use and sell them.
There are some miscellaneous cuts as well that the processor will probably just throw out if you don't ask them about it. And that's organs, that's bones, that's fat or trim fat. So this is something people like GT and I, we want to get everything that we pay for. So we like to specify to the processor that we want all the organs, we want as many bones as possible, and we want all the trim fat, all the suet, because we want to make tallow, we want to make bone broth, we want to either consume the organs or, give it to, GT as a dog. I could make freeze-dried capsules or supplement out of it, something like that, if I don't want to eat, say, the kidney. But it's really nutrient dense. Everything that I just mentioned, the organs are extremely nutrient dense. The bones, you can make really great bone broth, and the fat you can use to cook for the rest of the year. So that's utilizing the whole animal. And some producers, some processors might even ask you if you want the hide made into a pelt. I mean, that's more common for like a sheep or a bison, of course, but this is something to consider. And I would say people are getting shorted a few $100s if they just let the processor throw this out, or sometimes they just go and sell it on some little side business. But if you're aware and you're educated, you can take that home with you and utilize it to your advantage.
I hope that video helped. Please consider liking and sharing. And most importantly, subscribe to Wyoming Based on X, Rumble, and YouTube. We're creating an outdoor and healthy living channel and brand that is anti-woke and anti-establishment. Unlike all of these other popular companies, we don't hate you. We're not co-opted by the woke mind virus like all of these other channels and brands. By caring about healthy eating, exercise, nature, family, self-improvement, and community, we are going against the mainstream. These things aren't really valued by modern society, but they are valued to us and you. By today's standards and striving after these things, that makes us radicals. And we don't care. We want to build community, share a healthy and balanced lifestyle, and spread positivity.